Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the gallery to attend. And let's see, David Trotman's on vacation. Mike Dunmore hopefully will be here before the end of the meeting. And in Mike's place, we have Matt Donor that's going to be available for any discussions that are coming up through the meeting. So thank you very much, Matt, for taking the time to be here. And so at this point, I'd like to just advise the members of the gallery where the location of the emergency exits are, and the notification that the proceedings are being video recorded but still have not been posted publicly yet. We're still waiting for some explanations. To remind members of council that disclosure of pecuniary interest could be made now or at any time throughout the meeting. And we will have a break at 10:30 if required. So at this point, we have approval of the agenda. Council approves the agenda of session 15-2019 as circulated. Moved by Creelman and seconded by Martin. Are there any additions, deletions? Seeing none then, all in favor? Carries. And approval of the previous minutes. The council approves the minutes of session 14-2019 as circulated. Moved by Mantalo and seconded by Nix. Any discussion? All in favor? That carries. And now we have a very special occasion. We would like to acknowledge two of our members of staff for their long-term service awards. So if I could ask first for Judy Coney to come. And Judy has had 20 years of service for the town of Morrow, and this is grateful appreciation of that. Thank you. Thank you. And next, Linda Robinson. And this is with great appreciation for 30 years of service with the town and being known for your dedication. Okay, so now we're at public question period. Is there any questions of the gallery? Yes, Mr. Monroe.
Bill Monroe, 13 Bayberry Road, Mono. Your Worship, councillors. I have a question about the Main Street Revitalisation Initiative Fund, the money which has been put forward. I'm fairly aware of this programme because a relative of mine works in it in another town, and we don't have a main street to revitalise or improve, so you've decided to go with a hike and bike trail network task force. And I was just looking over it in the minutes, and I see some of the trails which are being proposed run right through my street, Bayberry Road. I was wondering, I'm addressing you, Ralph, as you're the chairman, I believe. I was wondering what you had in mind for Bayberry Road trail-wise.
First of all, I'll preface my answer by saying we're planning on a public meeting on the 11th of September, and we'll outline what we have in mind for all of the trail system. The trail system is meant for biking and for walking, and it's designed to provide a safe place for people to bike and walk. As you probably know, women in particular do not cycle because of the feeling of safety. So one of the things that we'd like to do is improve the sense of safety. And the other thing is to make some continuity so that people can bike from one area to another, so that you can go from the second line, almost the second line, and the developments over there, Fieldstone and Island Lake, to your development over reasonably safe trails. The trail is probably a misnomer because at the moment we're going to be very low key on changes. We'd be putting in some places where we need some connectivity. On your street, my anticipation would be that there would be some signage indicating that this was such and such a trail. It could be the Bayberry Trail or whatever, and that was useful for walking and biking. I can't tell you exactly on your street what's going to be done in terms of for walking or biking. I suspect it's all going to be on the road, and there's going to be no changes to the infrastructure as such.
Except we're going to have
A sign.
more bikes,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, the meeting on the 11th, if nobody has any information, they can't exactly protest anything on the 11th.
Well, the
And
purpose.
the reason I'm asking is, if you can give me an idea, I will go around the neighbourhood and inform them to see if they want more bikes on a relatively quiet street with no sidewalks and an increasing amount of young children over the past 2 years. I'm talking 2-year-old, 3-year-old kids out in the streets now, you know. It used to be it was all old people like me, but now it's kids running around, you know. And frankly, I wouldn't like to be known as a trail for bikes.
That's a part of the purpose of the public meeting. There's nothing cast in stone.
Yeah, but as I said, Ralph, if the people don't know the questions to ask before they come, it's plus who comes to the public meetings as well under these circumstances.
The extent of the information that we've provided is probably not adequate to answer your questions, but it does show you quite extensive. There are three maps that are outlining the trail system.
Oh, I saw all the trail systems, but as I said, I'm mainly interested in, it's a NIMBY situation. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I understand that. So,
And I've read through, I have all the comments, and there's actually driving mentioned at one point, you know? Driving? Yeah, cars.
well, could you amplify on that? I'd like to respond to you, but I don't know what you mean by driving with respect to the trails.
The goal of committee, item 21, walking, cycling, and driving. Well, I read it. I need to go out to the truck. I've got all the paperwork out there if you want me to bring it in. But that's what it says, item 21, cycling, walking, cycling, and driving.
Well, it's drawn a blank with Fred and me, who are both on the committee, so there's no intention that this be a driving trail.
Yeah, well, it was just mentioned, but if you're going to advertise it as a trail on the website, obviously the people that live there will know about it, but are you trying to attract people from outside to use the place as a cycling trail?
Mostly it's for you and the kids you're talking about. Walking and cycling has become, I'd say, in the last few decades, a more popular thing to do. And it's recognized that it's a part of the way we should transport ourselves, if you like, as well as for recreation. So we're trying to encourage that.
Okay.
So I'm hoping, Bill, that I'll see you out on a bike coming down to Orangeville or something.
Well, I'm usually told to go on my bike sometime sooner or later, you know. Okay, thank you, Your Worship, councillors.
Your questions, I appreciate that.
And there doesn't seem to be anything further, so we do have a delegation at 9:30. My suggestion is, under the unfinished business, the Island Lake Family Park revised site plan, it's going to be a little bit more involved, so we might want to wait until after our delegation. Everything, okay? Can we go on to unfinished business number 2, request to open landfill for residents for brush this fall? And Mr. Dunmore did give us his report that he had submitted back in June regarding the volume of visits. But this request comes from, I received an email from somebody who has a 45-acre property. And the concern was stated in the email with the request is that he was concerned about trying to do burning because of the weather that has been this summer. It's so dry. I don't know how the rest of you feel about how dry it is, but I know for the rain that came down last night, you might as well have said, why bother? So I do understand the point made by the resident saying that there is a risk in terms of embers flying, etc. Even though he's prepared, he has a pond, can protect himself to a certain extent. Okay, so we'll reconvene. Good morning, Mr. Dunmore. So now we're at, thank you, Schedule A. So Ralph, would you like to start off with Schedule A?
Thank you. I really wanted some input from David Trotman about number 2. I interpret this as an early analysis of the provincial policy statement changes and an opportunity for us to provide some input. So I don't think I have anything to say, given that David's not here. Number 11. This is really quite a significant grant. It's the NBCA has received a grant for $138,000, and it'll be used to repair streams. The plan is to plant the equivalent of 100 acres of forest along about 4 kilometers of streams. And this is a significant amount of money given the tight budget. The NBCA's budget is about $5 million. The contribution from the provincial government is about $97,000. So this is far in excess of all that the Ontario government puts in. So this is good. This is good. Number 16 drew my attention. This is the Norfolk County resolution with respect to. Nope, sorry, I got the wrong number.
18? Gas wells issue?
I meant Hastings Highland resolution. No, I didn't want to speak about
Okay.
Norfolk. Thank you.
Okay, municipal amalgamation?
Yes, I wanted to speak about that. The issue is definitely on the table with the province, and I like this letter. I thought it was extremely well written. It hit all of the main points that are significant with respect to amalgamations in general, as well as with municipalities. I feel that it's so good that we should be supporting it and be sending a letter of support to the provincial government, indicating that we support the contents of the letter of Norfolk County of August the 17th.
Okay, and what's everybody else's? Okay. So we will send a letter of support then? Yeah?
I think in the covering letter, we should indicate that Dufferin is already engaged in a process to find efficiencies, to find areas that are to identify areas that are working well now, that we do in fact share services, and that we are engaged in that activity, because this is pretty punchy stuff, and I don't want the province to be left with the impression that we aren't doing our fair share. Having said that, this study that we're about to embark upon, as I indicated a number of meetings ago, is going to identify areas that we shouldn't touch, as well as areas that we can do better. But when we met with Minister Clark in Ottawa at AMO, first words out of his mouth were basically, what are you doing to become more efficient? What are you doing to see where you can share services and so forth? They are really, really keen on this angle. But I really like the motion. I just think that it should have a context which speaks to what we're doing here in Dufferin.
Okay, so then maybe Mark and I can work on a covering letter.
I think that's a great idea, because otherwise it can come out easy like we're just protecting our backsides, and we are not trying to move forward on the province's interests.
And that's it for you? Okay, Fred?
Well, as with Ralph, I know the provincial policy statement thing is really important, and I'm familiar with the 2014 policies. I read this document, and I guess I was going to ask David if he was here. There is a comment deadline of October or something, whether we're going to be commenting. But my problem in even commenting is that this thing is so, this document, I don't know I really don't know how they're going to change provincial policies. It's hard to tell from this document. It's all kind of nice words, okay? So I don't have a question for staff. I don't even know how staff would comment, because it's so hard. It's like Bill 108. I mean, the detail is really going to be in the regulations, and it's so hard to know what's coming out. I know the Watson and number 3 Watson and Associate report is important. I still am a bit confused about the community benefits charge, as is our mayor. Fred, with all due respect, I did try to read the Town of Mono branding guide, and I fell asleep. But I know it's important, and I trust you to do it. I hope everyone read item 9, the letter from the NVCA. I'm surprised that Councillor Mankslow didn't comment on it. If you've read it and you know the letter the minister sent to the conservation authorities, I just will say that while I cannot quote the current Conservation Authorities Act verbatim, I am familiar with it. And to the best of my knowledge, there is nothing in that act which gives the minister the power to write a letter that he did to the conservation authorities. And basically what the NVCA is saying to the minister is, yeah. Yeah. So I was impressed with that. The last comment I was going to make is, and this gets complicated, and a lot of the public doesn't understand it, but number 12, the regulation mapping update. Actually, I do have a question there. Because of this mapping update, will we have to change our natural heritage study? Dave is not here, but we don't need to answer that right now. But what I thought in reading that document is that is one of the, so much of the public, when they go online, even on our town's website, and they see the regulated area of the conservation authorities, oh, that's the law. It isn't. It's a screening guide, okay? And those maps are developed, some by engineering or elevation models and various other things. So at the end of the day, any particular property, it may mean you need to go to the Conservation Authority for a permit for something, but there still can be a test as to whether or not you're, say, in a floodplain. You can, okay? And I thought the TRCA's document explained that very well. But I'll go back to my question to staff. I haven't seen this updated mapping. Will it mean that we change anything in our natural heritage study?
I haven't seen the mapping either, Fred. I would say if we have to change our natural heritage mapping, then they didn't provide us up-to-date information when we did it. I would say no, that we should have had the most accurate data as it pertained to floodplain.
But that was more than a year ago, and they've just redone this mapping, and I mean, probably very minor little changes, but
Possibly, but I would think that would also be encompassed in the slope analysis anyways. the steep slopes in the valley bank should have been covered by the Natural Heritage Program anyways.
That's it. John?
I did read the branding guidelines, and they're tough to get through, but the intent is wonderful, Fred, and congratulations to yourself and Linda in terms of providing us with a consistent look and theme and designating permissible typefaces and so forth for our the appearance that we create for the rest of the world. I think it's a valuable thing to have, and most modern organizations have this very same thing. We've already dealt with the motion, or the motion of the municipality with regard to restructuring. The only other observation I'd make is that the special advisor's report on Blue Box transition, David Lindsay's report,
Mike, John? Sorry.
The Blue Box transition report written by David Lindsay. I was hoping that certain components of this would occur faster and sooner, frankly, than they are, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
Sure.
They did it all. But I would just like to, my response to the number 9 is that in any company, someone who has 2% of the shares or puts in 2% of the money doesn't get to call the shots. I think that's, Nottawasaga is in a good place to be able to say, we are still going to have the maple syrup. We are still going to have the kids come and do their outdoor ed portion there. That seems to be the wrong thing to do. And of course, I totally support the number 16, which talks about, and it is a very firm letter, and I'm happy with the covering letter. I think that is exactly the direction we should go. Thanks, John.
Okay. So we have a motion that we accept Schedule A to this agenda.
What about your comments on Schedule A? What comments?
I concur. So would you like to move the motion?
I'll move the motion.
Moved by Nix and seconded by Maintville. All in favor? Carries. Okay, so reports from staff and council. So skip over Matt because now your boss is back.
I could let Matt continue if he wants to. As council may or may not be aware, the Orangeville Agricultural Society normally requests a water tank from Public Works for the fall fair. I think they've had some management turnovers and have missed the opportunity to ask council. They asked about 2 weeks ago. In discussions early this year with the mayor, we had already prepared for this event. So if council's okay, we'll send a water tanker to we've sent them another letter to ask them to come in at the donation time, but I do think they've had some management switchovers and duties. Unless council has any objection, we'll send a truck and a staff member down for the fall fair. Purple Hill, as council's aware, we've had a few emails with respect to, I would call it not necessarily understanding what we did in the subdivision. I think we're getting through the process. Matt and I both wish that they made gray crack filler. But we also have some emails with respect to the shouldering, with respect to the weeds that are coming back in the concrete areas. We turned the subdivision exactly back to what it was in the late 80s when we did it. Residents have not really seen any significant change down there for 30 years plus, and I think they'll end up getting through the maintenance The lawns are weedless down there, so I'm pretty sure the weeds will disappear in the shoulders as well on that one. So if council gets any concerns on that. Brookfield Fieldstone wastewater treatment plant, as council is aware, there was some issues with the media fins. That's scheduled for replacement late September, mid-October. Both rotating RBCs will be taken offline and repaired once again.
These are the fins that turn, the ones that fell off.
Correct. So they've been gradually, so they're upgrading the media thickness and hoping for the best results on that. And that's all done at the cost of Brookfield and Blue Metric. Sepratech is coming to the table on that.
Then are we going to put that type of fin with the thicker thing on it in the watermark? Or, I
that-
know it's not up to us, but
Yeah, that's really up to Watermark. I can't recall whether they put in a thicker medium at that time, but the loading, the chemical balance and the bacteria that grows on the fins is very different in the Watermark subdivision than it is in the Fieldstone, the chemical content of it. So I don't think the loading is quite as heavy in Watermark, but and yeah, possibly, definitely not as many youth, right? So, so that'll take place mid-October. So they're setting up right now to haul the sludge to in the interim to Orangeville and with a backup of a closer place, but we may get some smell issues during that week or two when they're down. Fifth line, as
Mike, just a minute, before you leave Fieldstone, what about the septic bed? Have they ever agreed to the, however many beds that we're supposed to have? Isn't that still an outstanding issue?
Mark and I met with Burnside and over the last couple months, and Burnside finalized the letter reiterating basically council's concerns and Public Works to build all the beds. So that's still, we're still waiting to hear the response from Brookfield with respect to that, but the town's asking for all 12 beds. Fifth line, is council's aware, it's still closed south of 25 Side Road. Matt and I have the drawings and tender documents in-house, and we expect to release the tender, I would think Monday of next week. And at that time, Les and I will review, once that tender closes, Les and I will review the budget, and either we'll be back to council for shifting of projects or how we're going to pay for that this fall.
Through the chair, Mike, I'd like to just go back to the septic system. I recall a pump out at that site some time ago. Is this the second time the fins have gone awry? We're having to replace them again?
Well, there's periodic pump outs on a bi-monthly basis for the
But there was a major one done to allow maintenance, or more than maintenance, was reconstruction of the damage that occurred.
This is the second round of these fins being replaced.
Doesn't sound good. And you're suggesting that they feel that there's some portion of the fin is a heavier fin this time, that may make a
The
difference?
thickness is a 5 mil as opposed to a 3 mil.
I see.
so-
Wasn't it a bolt problem at Watermark?
Brookfield has yet to provide us with their forensic analysis of what caused the failure. Everything points to that, but I believe there's litigation between Brookfield and Fieldstone and Sepratech.
That
as well.
forensic report is old. I don't know how old, a year or so, and we've been asking for it.
Probably 2 years.
That's ridiculous.
2
that
years, and
we
they
can't get access to that.
And that was notified in RJ Burnside's letter as well, with respect to the beef that gives us to ask for the 12 beds. It's part of the letter as well.
So my understanding is that Watermark is also taking sewage to Orangeville. And last week, anyway, maybe things have changed in a week. In Fieldstone, is there no way that the smell can get pretty bad? Well, that was a couple of years ago. We drove over and sat there for a while. Mike was there too, and it's pretty disgusting. And we went in a few roads to see if it changed, and it really didn't. So is there not some way of, I don't know, fanning it up into the air or doing something? There's got to be an answer for that. It's really horrible for people who live there. I don't think it happens at Watermark, and actually that's their problem anyway, but maybe there's something to be done.
So yesterday, we got the septic pumped at the office here and basically flooded the whole office with a beautiful smell. It is septic, right? The time that I met you down there, the main cylinder pump had gone. So it's basically rotating, and now it's stagnant. So the smells will be intermittent. They will come. It was bad the day we were down there, but that is what it is. Our complaints at the Public Works Department, we've logged 3 in 4 years, so I think we're doing pretty good. It's definitely in a location where multiple of them are downwind. And as to the smell that's occurred every time is when the RBCs have stopped rotating. The town wants this to be rotating 100% of the time unless we're doing maintenance. So we're looking at hopefully minimal stoppage of the RBCs.
As for the Watermark issue, we're not aware of any operational issues in there, so it could just be the regular pumping required for sludge. There is still some sludge pumping that needs to occur from those plants, and that would have been.
So they also had, Mark and I have yet to sit down, but they also had the master motor that blew some bearings, so they had it offline too. These are standard. Watermark is how old now?
7, 8.
So that would be a useful life of a bearing. So
I stand corrected.
sorry. Try to cross paths we just don't get to every day, and that's it from Public Works.
Kim, do you have anything further? Just let you know that the recreation summer student, she's actually been doing some work for all departments this past summer. Emma, her last day is Thursday, so she's been with us since May and has been terrific, very instrumental in running our soccer program this year, which the soccer program winded up last Wednesday with our overall barbecue. I had some great help from other staff members who came out and flipped over 720 hamburgers for me in a matter of 2 hours. So I really, really appreciated all of the help from a couple of staff members, that's for sure. And as I said, Emma just ran a fabulous program this year. I heard a lot of compliments to her from parents and coaches. So I was really, really pleased with how smoothly everything went in that regard. I guess the next thing is, as Mark has alluded to, is that a new funding program came out yesterday, which I printed, and it's a combination of federal, province, and municipality funding, and it's basically one of the streams within the funding program is for parks, recreation, and culture. Just from my quick read of it, there's a number of things that our recreation department here could apply for, going right back to community center upgrades for accessibility to the new park that we're looking at, tennis courts, that kind of thing, maybe even a storage building for some equipment for the ski club. lots of things to look at as possibilities, and we can apply for more than one project. There's 2 different streams coming down the way. We have one for November. We have to apply by, I believe it's November 19th for 2019, and then another one in 2020, so, or 2020, maybe 21. Anyways, a couple of intakes on this, so just letting you know that we'll definitely be putting more work into that and reaching out to community members in that regard.
Kim, does the municipality make the application on behalf of the ski club, for example, or how does that work?
Nonprofits are allowed to apply for this, so Ski Club would be allowed, to apply. However, and as I said, I've just
And it's new-
very,
it's new to you.
it's kind of the initial read, the guidelines are 21 pages long, so just reading the guidelines, it looks more like the municipalities are a better, that main applicant, I guess would be the way to put it. But they certainly are looking for joint applications. So to work with the ski club on something would be definitely a feather in our cap as far as that's concerned. I had a good meeting with the Mono Tennis Club last week as well. They brought me up to date on how their season's gone, and they've certainly, their membership didn't increase this year, but what did change was the number of players between the ages of 30 to 50-year-olds. So it looks like that age group is getting out and playing quite a bit more, as opposed to it being the younger kids and the group of 65 and plus. So that was good news. I did go to watch one of their summer tennis camps one morning. They were sold out at their tennis camp, and I was really impressed with how well that was run for sure. That was a great program that they ran at Mono Community Center, or Mono Center Courts for our municipality. I'm also presently right now working on a maintenance agreement with the Mono Nordic Ski Club, one that has been kind of on the back burner for a little bit, but certainly coming to the forefront now with ski season coming up, so that will be coming to council shortly. And the changes to the baseball diamond, compliments of the Headwaters baseball organization have now been made at both Mono Community Center and at Cardinal Woods. And I don't know if any of you have noticed the stairs at Menorah, the ones going down to the multipurpose room, they were in pretty bad shape. And because of our maintenance foreman, Dave, who spent a lot of time last week, he totally regrinded them all down and repainted them, and to a cost savings of having to replace those, which was going to be probably in the tune of $20,000 to $30,000 to replace those cement stairs. Dave has certainly given us more life to them, so if you're driving by, go take a look at those stairs. He's done a remarkable job on them and given us lots more life there. Not to say, though, that I'm not getting, just so you know, but some quotes right now for a new deck at Menorah, just giving you a heads up for budget time. So, the outside deck has a number of boards that have to be replaced, and that deck is now, the original deck is 30 years old. So, but there's other, don't fret, council, there's lots of options there, so I'll be presenting you with lots of options in that regard. Yes,
Just on things like that, now that we've signed an
Mike?
agreement with
Mike?
Credit Valley on the trail in from Mono Amaranth School to the Vicky Barron, there's been a minor bit of maintenance on that the wooden part of it, I noticed. I assume they're doing it? Do they have, are there any plans to replace that walkway, that 500-meter walkway?
nothing's been brought forward to us at this point. I think, according to the maintenance agreement, they had any large capital items have to be brought forward to us prior to September, October. I think that's what we wrote into the agreement. So Whether they're planning on bringing that forward, I'm not sure, but that's what the agreement said. So we have not to date heard anything in that regard.
I just would point out 3 or 4 years ago, you and Keith were pretty adamant that that thing was a safety concern. I biked it last week, and yeah, a little bumpy, a little up and down, but still works, you know, probably could last another 3 or 4 years.
Has anyone gone off the side lately?
No,
Do you know
I
about
didn't this
that?
time. It wasn't raining, so.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. At this time of the month, we had hoped that our new telephone system would have been installed by now. Due to different conflict of scheduling and I guess on the vendor side, some staff vacations, we're hoping to have it in place by the end of September. We did have a representative come down. They met with Colin, Jake, and myself, and we do have a draft plan to get it going. It's an internet Wi-Fi based telephone system, so it's a new approach, but hopefully we'll have that in place by the end of the month. And it will fix some of the current problems we have with the auto attendant, the timing of the messages, and we'll just have different options for rerouting calls as well. And that's it for me.
Mr. Simpson.
We are still struggling with Google to get our video streaming online. We've been unsuccessful to get them to take a look at our appeal for the reason for being terminated. We had, of course, filed an appeal, filed a second appeal. We reached out to them by social media, and we had initial contact with them, and they were responding. But we haven't heard anything from them for about 5 or 6 days. And the last contact was, well, we review all appeals, but they haven't done anything since then. So yesterday we filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. So we're going through that process as well. If we're unsuccessful, we can at the very least say we've tried all avenues to engage them in a conversation. But to date, we've been unsuccessful. So we're still recording, but we're not uploading, and they're not being streamed live. And the other point is, I just want to point out that the county and all constituent municipalities in the county will be conducting an emergency management exercise on October 23rd at Menorah Park. Everyone who's part of the emergency management control group and their alternates will be invited and encouraged to attend. And that's it.
Just to follow up to the Schedule 8 item raised, the letter from Minister Yurek that Mr. Hevener at MBCA so rightly responded to. Actually, I sent Doug an email, and all it said was bravo. Anyways, we did not receive that letter. It was advertised when it was out in the paper that the municipalities and the conservation authorities all received this letter. We have never received that letter from the minister. Ralph was kind enough to provide me or show me a copy of the letter that was actually sent, and I believe it was addressed to whom it may concern. Is that to whom it may concern is the way they addressed that letter to the conservation authorities, and again, it was never forwarded to us. So just thoughts on that Schedule A matter. Community standards bylaw that went through council last meeting. Councilors were to provide me with any comments they have. Just a reminder, I haven't received any. If I could get them in the next day or two, that would be great, because I want to bring that back. And finally, for those who have not heard, the divorce proceedings for the townships of Amaranth and East Garifrax have been initiated for a closing date of January 2020. I was advised yesterday that the two townships are moving towards de-amalgamation of their administrative services.
I can shed some light on that. De-amalgamation might be too strong a word. As I understand it, they're still going to potentially share services, but they're looking at East Carifraxa, in any event, is looking at an absolutely wonderful opportunity from the standpoint of a location that they can effectively use for their town hall. So, I don't know whether I was told in confidence, but Mark, do you?
Well, the email's gone out to everybody,
Oh.
all the clerks and treasurers, but I believe it's the new DACL site.
Yeah, it's basic.
On the,
Yeah.
on the hill.
Yeah, okay, so this is the cat's out of the bag then. And as everyone knows, the Dufferin Community Living was affected dramatically by changes to such things as minimum wage, and their model has now changed, and it has freed up space in that building. So it's quite a, the mayor is quite excited about the possibility of using that facility, but he was at pains to point out that, no, there still could be some sharing of individuals working for both municipalities. Oh, and just on the Uric letter, before I forget, he was the author of that absolutely atrocious letter from MTO that got us all excited. Mr. Uric, when he was Minister of Transportation and didn't know that we had 2 districts and so forth and so on.
Okay, so, Ralph?
I'd like to comment on in 3 areas. One is healthcare, the other is NVCA, and the pollinator garden. And I'll start with the pollinator garden. If you haven't visited the pollinator garden in the last few weeks, you must go and see it. It's absolutely wonderful. The growth is fantastic, and this is very interesting because we've had nothing but sunlight, but I guess we had a huge reservoir of water right in the ground from our wet spring. But the plantings are huge plantings, which are just bigger than this, and it's just very, very, very impressive. Sharon, what did you say?
3 cubic meters.
3 cubic, that's right. At least, quite a few of them are 3 cubic meters. Anyway, the bench that we put there that was donated by, was it Jamie? Anyway, it was, we have to move it because the plants are coming in on it now. Sharon did a very interesting interview with, it may help me a bit, Sharon, because I was away, but it was with Rogers TV. Yep. Publicizing the garden, and I think she was dressed in her finery, and suitable shots were taken of her.
What, did you see it?
No,
Nobody's going to see it.
I'm sure, I don't get Rogers TV, I'm sure. Anyway, it's really nice to see the publicity happening, because this is a way it attracts people to come. Yesterday, we had the Inglewood Horticultural Society who came and had a tour of the garden, and there were 4 or 5 of our volunteers out to help them out, and I thought that was very interesting. To get back to Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, the letter that people have been talking about, I want to read one paragraph for you. This is what I describe as a bombshell letter. It's from Minister of the Environment, Jeff Uric, and it's about his direction to the Conservation Authority. Specifically, it's addressed to whom it may concern. And it finishes off with this paragraph, the second last paragraph. In the meantime, I request that you review and consider your own Conservation Authority's activities and begin preparations and planning to wind down those activities that fall outside the scope of your core mandate. And previously, he'd mentioned the core mandate as being natural hazards and conservation of management of CAO-owned or controlled lands and drinking water protection. Those are the only core mandates that apply to all conservation authorities. So we were supposed to wind down any activities outside of those. That includes maple syrup. And by the way, maple syrup it has, I think, and Fred knows more about it than I do, but it has 2 particular values. One is education, and it's a great educational thing for kids and older people to do it, to see as well. They also sell the maple syrup, and so it provides funding, and they're not getting much funding from, we provide them funding, and they get funding from many of these other programs. So anyway, they're supposed to wind them down. I also encourage you to refrain from developing new policies that are not aligned with your mandate or with provincial policies. Finally, I ask that while we are undergoing this review and updating the legislation and regulations, that you do not proceed with any increases to your fees or levies. Anyway, and you got the response from Doug Hevner, which is in the document, in the Schedule A. So that really was, shook up the people, particularly the staff at the Conservation Authority, particularly the people that are doing education and other things which are supposed to be wound down. I'd like to comment on healthcare. There was an announcement from the province about cuts in healthcare, and to make it clear, the province made an announcement that the municipalities would be responsible for 30% of the cost of the public health care and 20% of the cost of new daycare spaces. So new daycare spaces had previously been fully funded by the province. Healthcare costs, we actually pay 40% of the cost of the Dufferin-Wellington Guelph public health budget. At the moment, we pay 40%. So this 30% is not an increase. That's not entirely true, the 40%, because there are a number of other programs which are currently 100% funded by the government, and they may not. So when you make up the total budget, you have this big block which is applied to most things, and you have a smaller area which is separate funding streams sort of thing. It doesn't look to me like we really know the answer as to whether or not it'll cost us anything more as a municipality, but it doesn't quite look like it will at the moment. And they've also added funding, for example, for ambulances. The ambulance funding will increase by about 4%. And I think, Your Honor, that's everything. Thank you.
Yeah, a number of things. I'll leave the Task Force on Public Safety to John to report on. Mostly what I have been doing, the Headwater Streams Committee, is these 3 sites where we're fighting Phragmites, 3 different techniques. Mike, it's proving very difficult and hard. And I CC'd Mike on an email I just sent to the county. We'd like to actually try a 4th site, which is in the ditch on Hockley Road, which is county property, because we have Phragmites starting there, and our concern is it's going to migrate up the new Baker Creek channel that we spent a lot of money to build. So I've asked the county if I can have permission to go in there. We're going to try a 4th technique on that patch of Phragmites. We're going to actually try to dig the rhizomes out of the ground. The other thing that's coming up is with the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, we will be planting trees to the west of your pollinator garden. This is 300 trees. This is a TD Canada Trust grant. This is on October the 5th. We have some details to work out. I know, Laura, you had once mentioned helping with the food, and Ralph has given me permission to use the barn on the Hockley property, which was nice of him, considering that.
And drink our water
Thank you.
supply.
But more importantly, I think we can use their new water system with some hoses across the field to water the trees. We'll try that out. So that's coming up on October the 5th. Any and all help from councillors would be appreciated, and that pretty well does me.
Interesting arena board meeting tomorrow night that they're already asking for 10-year capital plan for their DC charges in Shelburne. So that was sort of maybe the reason why I was questioning how do these things, yeah. Anyway, and they're also, Shelburne's put out their deadline of when they want budget submissions in, so we'll see how we progress with that. So the season is on us. John?
I think we had a good meeting of the Community Safety Task Force. Would you say about 30 people, Fred?
No, not counting the OPP and us and other councillors, there was 19.
19? Okay. I was hoping it was 30. But, you know, good turnout given the fact it was an evening meeting in the middle of summer. We had a number of issues raised, not simply speeding and traffic concerns, but concerns having to do with safety in and around homes. one of the more interesting comments made was having to do with drones and the intrusion of drones into people's backyards with swimming pools and so forth. And a number of us were thinking of solutions to that particular issue that probably shouldn't be mentioned. But nonetheless, I have started writing, and the understanding with my colleagues is that I'll come up with a draft and kick it out, and they can have at it, and ultimately we will have a series of recommendations for council, as well as a commentary on some of the concerns that have been raised. And I'm feeling very optimistic. There was widespread support for the notion of a reintroduction of photo radar for purposes of speed. And in doing research on that, it seems as if even jurisdictions that did away with it, such as British Columbia, are now reintroducing it. And it's also a feature in Alberta, of all places, where it's a public-private partnership with a company that essentially puts in the equipment at no cost to the municipality, and then the proceeds of the fines are shared between the province, the municipality, and the private sector company. So I think there are a number of options, but as I told the audience, we have a tough road here in terms of convincing the province on such issues as increasing speeding fines and potentially photo radar and other things that we are going to have all hands on deck, lest our recommendations go ignored. I was up in Ottawa for AMO, which was very interesting. Two sessions of note. One was the one referred to earlier with Minister Clark. The second one was a lunch and learn, although it was light on the learn, with the chief spokesperson slash lobbyist for the wireless telecoms. And he was presenting former Premier of PEI by the name of Mr. Giz. Mr. Giz was presenting on the whole rollout of 5G technology. And I think somebody forgot to tell him that he was talking to the rural caucus because he seemed to be caught a little flat-footed when I asked a question of, well, you know, when is rural Canada going to see this technology? Because I fully expect you're going to be, or your clients are going to be rolling it out in urban centers long before it goes to rural areas. He basically confirmed that. And a number of people really went after him on such things as competition. It was very clear that the big providers do not want to share their infrastructure with the resellers. They are dead set against this, and yet they cannot guarantee us, frankly, a brave new world anytime soon. One comment that I found most telling, and that is, and this is a paraphrase, but it's pretty much a direct quote, we can't stand any more competition. We have quite enough. And I'll leave it at that.
John, can I ask John a question?
Sure.
I don't know whether this came up, but are this providers, the Bells and are they all using this, how the Chinese companies?
Huawei?
Yeah.
Some are using Ericsson equipment. The problem with Huawei is that the federal government is doing a security review, and it's sort of holding everything up. The other problem with the 5G rollout is that the auction of the bandwidth, if it hasn't occurred, is certainly late. And interestingly enough, it's done in such a fashion that the CRTC insists, or the government insists, that a certain percentage of that bandwidth be reserved for small providers. It struck me, listening to Mr. Giz, that a better strategy would have been you only get the bandwidth if you commit to dealing with the resellers in a fair and equitable fashion, and you only get the bandwidth if you guarantee that you are addressing the weaknesses in your current system before you provide Toronto with the 45th alternative high-speed choice, when in places like Mono, we don't have a choice. As somebody at our table said, we, G5, 5G, we have 0G right now. And the day after he presented, there was a headline in most media, and I rebroadcast it on my Facebook page, of Bell basically saying that they are going to slow down or not roll out as quickly service to rural Canada because the CRT is forcing their hand in terms of playing nice with the third-party providers. And I would note that they have been getting government subsidy towards that rollout, and now they're saying, no, we don't think we're going to do it if we're forced to share with others.
Yes, I did do an interview, and I have to say that it was quite fun, interesting. And Cole came back the next day because the sun wasn't out. So he came back the next day and met two of our volunteers who were there, and got some other good shots. I haven't heard from anybody who's seen this yet, but could be interesting. And I did pop in for a minute when the people were there from Inglewood, and that these are great things to be doing to push it out a bit. And but I wish that more Dufferin County people would show up and take a look at the garden. And I just have to say about the conservation authorities, they do such a fabulous outreach, and people wouldn't even know they were there if they stayed doing what the mandate is. And I really resent someone saying that when you provide 2% of the money, you get to say what happens. I think we have a big voice in this, and we should keep it loud and proud.
Good. Okay, so if there's nothing further, no other business that comes to mind? Yeah.
Did we not amend the procedural bylaw to have another business segment? Did we not have when we amended the procedural bylaw recently, did we not add other business?
No, all we did was under notices of motion.
Notice of motion?
Yeah.
Okay. I do have a question for staff, and I'm going to be a broken record on this. At the last meeting, I mentioned that the property on Highway 10, which was formerly the Burger Place, is no longer there. Well, there's that sign, that's one of my issues, but there's another property, and I think
It used to be Cruisers?
used to be
Another-
Cruisers, correct.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
becoming a magnet for more junk. There's a porta potty there. There's a container that's been brought into that property, and the issue that I raised was there was an abandoned vehicle there. So I'm a little concerned that we're seeing a resurgence of that particular property as a dumping ground, and there is fill that's been brought in there as well. I don't know whether it's old or new. It's very old?
Sorry, the fill is very old.
Okay.
And I'm aware of that. We put a stop work on it because they had originally an approval, one step off of municipal approval to begin work there.
Yeah.
And started the fill, and I actually went out and stood on the driveway and told the contractor he wasn't even bylaw enforcement, it was me. That's how I know that was probably, I'm thinking 6-7 years ago. Eugene has been in contact with both of the landowners. It's one of these situations, it's their fault. The car is straddling the property line. So one owner is saying, no, it's his fault, and the other owner is saying it's our. Eugene is aware of it. I've also told him to get the fill regraded and cleaned up, so that is in the works. Obviously, it takes time, especially when the first volley back is, it's not even my car, right? So it's being looked after. I'm trying to set up a meeting next week with Eugene for a full list of properties and priorities, and to have them come to council, so.
And lest I forget, the SO up at 89 and Airport Road, I will be a broken record on this, I promise.
No, and that's fine, and we're aware of it, and so is our bylaw enforcement officer, and he's trying to get what he can get done, so voluntarily.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our agenda that we introduced and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Mona in Session 15-2019 held on the 27th of August 2019, that it be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Moved by Martin and seconded by Creamlian. All in favor? And we adjourn at 11:33 a.m. And that's moved by Nix and seconded by Manktolo. All in favor?
Is anyone driving down